opens, a sort of show of force. Joining us now, Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts. Senator Markey, thanks so much for being with us. All you headed to the chamber very shortly. What's the message? What are you trying to do this morning?
Well, we are trying to make it very clear that this country could be careening towards a constitutional crisis. The President of the United States yesterday just fired the investigator who was leading an investigation into the relationship between the Trump campaign, the Trump transition team, and the Russian government. We have to ensure that the American people understand that the United States Senate, or at least the Democrats in the United States Senate, are going to stand and demand that a special prosecutor be named in order to ensure that all of the facts are out on the table for the American people to see and understand as to what exactly was the reason that President Trump fired James Comey as he was conducting an investigation of Donald Trump himself.
A constitutional crisis, that is explosive language. What specifically are you pointing to, Senator?
Well, we obviously have very serious allegations that the Russians were attempting to influence our campaign, our most sacred event, to elect a president in a free and fair election. And there are very strong allegations that the Russians had relationships with people inside of the Trump campaign. In fact, subpoenas have now been issued in Northern Virginia with regard to General Flynn and General Flynn's associates. A grand jury has been impaneled up in New York. So we know that
are you suggesting, Senator, are you suggesting that the president's in violation of the Constitution? You use the words constitutional crisis. I understand that you think this causes problems, but you said constitutional crisis. Is he in violation of the Constitution?
What I'm saying is that the Constitution of the United States provides for an election of a president that is not influenced by foreign countries, and that there is an open investigation by James Comey until yesterday with regard to whether or not the Russians were influencing that election. The president is saying, his team is saying, that the reason James Comey was fired was because of the unfair way that James Comey treated Hillary Clinton during 2016. That is just not credible, especially given the fact that we know simultaneously there is an investigation of the Russian influence on the Trump campaign in 2016.
Reading this Rosenstein letter from the Deputy Attorney General, which I know you've read probably many times as we have as well, is there one thing in this letter that you disagree with that goes to the point of removal of the FBI director? He says it is because of the way, largely, that Comey handled Hillary Clinton and the email scandal. Is there one thing you disagree with in Rod Rosenstein's letter?
Well, the one thing that I would disagree with is that there is an ongoing Inspector General investigation of that very matter, and that there should have been a completion of that investigation before any final decision was made. Rod Rosenstein just started on this job. There is an open Inspector General investigation. And even if that was the conclusion ultimately that was reached, it still does not answer the question of why Donald Trump would all of a sudden believe that Hillary Clinton being treated unfairly was a justification for firing of a man who was conducting another investigation with regard to Russian influence of the Trump campaign and administration itself.
Senator, I know you want a special prosecutor. The question is, how hard are you willing to push for it? John Favreau, who wrote speeches for President Obama, said that Democrats and Republicans who still have dignity should grind government to a halt until a special prosecutor is named. Are you willing to grind the business in the Senate to a halt unless you get a special prosecutor?
Well, my hope is that Democrats and Republicans will come together and that there will be a universal call for a special prosecutor, that everyone will put country ahead of party, that we will give the American people the assurance that there will be an independent determination of what exactly happened in this relationship between the Russian government and our presidential election of 2016.
What does that mean, Senator? I mean, do you believe the Senate should do any business until it gets an independent prosecutor, a special prosecutor? Do you believe it is that serious?
Well, my goal is to obviously have an independent prosecutor, and I do believe that listening to several Republican senators over the last day, that there is a rising concern amongst many of the leading Republican senators as well, and that we can come together in order to call jointly for the establishment of a special prosecutor. I think that that would serve our country very well, and it would be a good statement to the country that we are committed as a Congress to getting the answers that the American people demand and deserve to have the answers to.
Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts.